Hey YouTubers, today we're going to be going over how to fix your Miele dishwasher that has a stuck circulation pump. It's pretty easy to do. This is a trick where you can use a fork to get it moving. Also, you can put in a new run capacitor.
Hey YouTubers, this is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a Miele Incognito. We're getting the F78 error. The way you know you have that is it either will show up on your display. Some of these have a display that will give you a code. The other symptom would be that you start a cycle, and you can hear it drain for about 30 seconds, and then it tries to fill, but only for about a second. You can hear the fill valve become active for about 1 second, and then you get a intake drain light error. You may also have this light blinking red, and that means that when it tried to spin the circulation impeller, that it does that right before it's going to start filling. It wasn't able to get it spinning fast enough, or maybe it was stuck. So that can be a symptom of an impeller that's stuck. Its shaft goes through a rubber seal, and when the rubber seal dries out, the shaft kind of gets stuck. There's too much friction, and it's not able to start spinning. So it's easy to fix, though. If your dishwasher's been sitting for a while and not in use, that can happen. So this one is outside, so you can just see a little bit better. What you can do is pull out the lower basket, give you guys a little better light, pull the lower spray arm out. You can turn the basket just a few degrees either this way or the other way to unlock it. That comes out. And then on some Miele dishwashers, there's a pretty big access hole here. Some of the other models have a piece of plastic in the way, so you would not be able to do this procedure. But it depends on the model. This is the G6000 series. But if it's open, what you can do is take a small fork. Smaller the better, and if this is straighter, it's better. This one's not ideal. But what you do is you put it in that hole as far in as it'll go, and then try turning back and forth. And what that can do is it can get the stuck impeller and free it up. I'm able to turn this a little bit, like just a quarter turn. I think because this fork's probably a little bit too big. But keep playing with it and see if you can just turn it back and forth. And sometimes that will be enough to kind of break the friction and get the thing going. Miele also sells a tool that's better than a fork. It's really designed to get in there and turn that round impeller back and forth. But even moving it a little bit may be all it takes to break that friction. So I'm just going, oh, I got a full turn that time. That was good. Just keep playing with it. And some people, what they've done, if it's been too hard to turn, is they grab the end of the fork with a pair of pliers and they give it a little tug so they're able to turn it more. So the other thing you can do is get a small pot of boiling water, like a saucepan. About that much water, get it boiling, pour it in there, and then you can add some rinse aid, or you could add vegetable oil, would work too. You just want something to act as a lubricant. Pour it in there, let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then try it again, because that can lubricate that seal, and then give it less friction. Maybe it can spin. If it starts spinning, you're good to go. So with these Miele dishwashers, you want to use them pretty much every day. If you go about a week or two without using it, this area can get dried out. If it gets dried out, then the rubber seal will get too dried out, no lubrication, and that can cause this problem. So it's pretty common. If you do have the one that has a plastic piece in the way, you can't do the fork trick, maybe using the hot water for 30 minutes with the rinse aid or vegetable oil will be enough where it can get the lubrication going. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and put your filter back in. Make sure you lock it so it won't come up. Put your spray arm back in, and then give it a try. If that doesn't work, the next step would be to replace the run motor capacitor. It's like a thing that helps the motor start in the beginning, and they're pretty cheap. We'll go over how to do that in a video coming up. I'll put a link to it. But that might do the trick for you to get your Miele going if you have that symptom. Another symptom that goes along with that is where it drains. It does fill, and then the circulation motor starts. You can hear it shooting water around. It goes about 10 seconds, and then it stops for about 10 seconds. Then it goes for 10 seconds, stops, goes, probably tries it about 6 times. And then finally you get a blinking intake drain error, and you get probably a blinking light here. And that just means that that run capacitor is probably getting worn out, or there's too much friction. And I would try the hot water and rinse aid and the fork trick, and if that doesn't work, I would go to the capacitor. Probably don't need to change out the motor. That would be unusual unless the dishwasher is really old. So thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to our channel. We'll send you some more good videos. Thank you. Hey YouTubers, this is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we're going to be dealing with a Miele dishwasher that's having trouble with the circulation motor. We're getting a circulation motor error like an F78, or we may just have a symptom where the dishwasher drains when you start it, and then it fills, and then it circulates the water for about 10 seconds. You can hear it squirting around, and then it pauses for 10 seconds, circulates for 10, pauses for 10, over and over. End up with a intake drain light error right here, blinking, red light blinking here. So this is a pretty simple thing. This is where we're going to put in a new run capacitor, which helps the motor to spin. And the one you want to get is a 14, it looks like a UF, but it's, I think they call it microfarad. I can't remember the exact term, but 14 with that U kind of shape, and then the F, that's an example. Or here's another one. It says 14. And the voltage rating, I think on both of these, is pretty high. This can handle up to 450 volts. This is only 110, 120 volts. This one is 440 volts, but that 14 is really what you're shooting for. And I don't think Miele makes these for these older models, so you may have to get an aftermarket one, but they're pretty cheap. Amazon has them. And you just need a Torx, I believe it's a Torx 15 tool, and something to bail out the water, and it'll be pretty easy. Shouldn't take you too long. So this one's been taken out of the cabinet already. To get it out of the cabinet, you just have to turn off the water and disconnect the water line. You have to disconnect the drain hose line, and just unplug it. On some Miele models, they give you so much power line, fill line, and drain hose line that you can get it out of the cabinet, and you can actually still keep it connected if you like. Just to be safe, you can just disconnect everything and get it out. To get it out of the cabinet, you have to, once you get the door open, you have to usually remove a couple of screws that are holding it into the cabinet on the sides, or maybe a couple that are going from the top, holding it into the wood. Some have actually all 4, and sometimes they just put it in so tight inside the cabinet that they don't even use screws, so you just have to check on yours. And what you do once you get the door open, get it out where you can work on it, so you're going to remove the triple filter, and you just want to get this water out of there best you can. We're going to put it on its back, so it's not as critical. If you put it on its side, you definitely want to get all the water out. These dishwashers do best when you have to service the components underneath. If you can do it by leaning it on its back though, because they're a little bit more watertight in that regard. Get the water out. You could use a turkey baster to get the remaining out. Close the door. We want to get to the bottom of the dishwasher. A lot of these capacitors, they have a bolt coming out, and the bolt is usually, let's see if I can find it. I think it's right about here. So you want to undo that bolt while it's still in this upright condition. That'll really help. All right, we're going to kind of get the hoses off to the side so they don't get damaged. We're going to lean it on its back. Take your time. Don't hurt your back. Try to get the hoses to go into that under area. All right. Okay, so now we're going to take out just 4 screws underneath to get off this bottom panel. So in this model, it's actually Phillips head screws, which is a little more common. Okay, one more. All right, grab your feet here and pull off the bottom plate. And you'll find 2 capacitors. One here, this is called a noise filter capacitor, and then you have the run capacitors down here. This one's an aftermarket one. We're going to switch it out. So this one's just been zip tied in place, but usually there's a bolt coming out of the back of it that goes through that hole. So you could just, in this case, you still have room to get underneath here and pull that nut out so you can get this off. I'm just going to cut this one. So before you touch these terminals, put a piece of metal in between these two and bridge them, and that'll get rid of the voltage, because there's enough voltage in a capacitor where it could hurt you. Then you can just take off the spade connectors, and we'll go ahead and put on a different one. I'm going to try this one, which is the 14, and just there's 4 of these, doesn't matter which one, just pick any of those if it does have that many, and then just do the other side, and you are pretty much done. You do want this one to be stationary. This one does have a bolt on it. We're going to try to utilize that bolt, go through that hole, and we can put the nut on there, because you do want that capacitor to be somewhat still. You don't want it to be moving around where the terminals might hit something. So while you have this cover off, what you could do also is press in on these tabs that bring the power to the motor, this one and this one, and you can pull them out, make sure they're clean. You may want to spray some electrical cleaner in there and on there to give you a really good connection for these power leads. They can only go in one proper way. Can't get it wrong. Put that back in. Put that back in. Sometimes when the pan underneath gets wet, some of the moisture can come up and corrode these connections. So it's good to really get them clean. Here's a circulation motor here. And then if one of these tubes coming out of the circulation motor, either this one or this one, had some junk caught in it, it could also cause a problem where the motor couldn't spin fast enough. So there's a way to get this motor out of here, and you can take this cover off and you can get in and check the impeller, and you could see, make sure there's nothing caught in there that could be causing the problem. But a lot of times it's just this capacitor. Bottom panel back on, and then give it a test. So when you look at the bottom panel and if you're not sure which way it goes on, you see that sometimes there's an imprint, a round imprint, and it should match this float. This is here in case the dishwasher gets too much water in it, this float will move and it'll make the dishwasher constantly drain, and it won't let new water come in. If the dishwasher gets too much water let in, it'll overfill, come down this little tube into the drain pan, and it'll make that float go up. All right, we're going to put the bottom panel back in. All right, just going to put these screws back in and we can give it a little test. All right, let's get it back on its feet. Check it out. One thing you can look at with an older capacitor, if there was trouble, sometimes they'll bulge. Like this casing looks fine, but you may notice that this is kind of getting rounded, and that'd be an overloaded or overheated capacitor. Get it back on its feet. All right, we'll go ahead and give it some power, give it a test. You want to make one of those Miele circulation pump tools for spinning the stuck impeller. Just take an old fork and bend it a little bit straighter, less of an arc, and then take the two middle ones and bend those guys all the way down, and then bend them back a few times until they break off, because you really just want the outer two. So those came off, and then just get these pretty even with each other. And that should do the trick. Pretty straight, like that. With the incognito Miele dishwasher on its back and the drip plate taken off, some of the parts interesting. This is the sump area. This is your drain pump. So if you take off this front panel, you don't even have to get this thing on its side. You can get in here and remove this pump and replace it if you need to. There's a couple of connectors, power connector. This is the temperature sensor. That's that little metal probe that you see. You can push it out if you want. There's the connector. This is the salt tank. This little sensor senses if you have salt in there. And this is your circulation motor. This helps to, solenoid when activated can only have the water shoot through just the upper spray arms. So it's a solenoid if you do like the half load. This is a noise filter that cleans up the voltage coming in. This is the voltage coming in to your dishwasher. This is the overflow tube. So if there's too much water for some reason in the upper segment, it'll go down this tube into the drip tray. If the drip tray gets about that much water, it'll push up on this styrofoam float and activate a micro switch here. And that'll tell the dishwasher, don't let any new water in and just keep draining, draining, draining. And until you get the water out, that's what's going to happen. This is a little weep hole where if the rubber seal fails, that is the seal between the motor shaft and the sump area finally gets wiped out and leaks. Water will leak out of the weep hole into the drip tray. That's a pretty common problem. And you can get a partition kit from Miele to fix it. This is the heater pressure switch right here. It comes out pretty easily if you want to switch it out. It's very commonly has problems, and then you'll get a symptom where your dishwasher just won't run because it can't sense the water pressure anymore. And this is the heater relay. This is what your machine uses to send power to the heater, and in this case it's an inline heater. Some of these have a heater element right in this section, and on this model it has one that's up with the water going up to your dishwasher. It heats it in line. This is your dryer fan, little motor back there. There's just a little protector that protects some of the connections, and this gives you good access if you want to just pop off that connector. And what else? Let's see. This is the water coming in to the dishwasher. Goes up into a tank, and this is an overflow right here, and also an air vent. This is senses how much water is in there, pressure sensor inside the upper tank. There's another valve to let the salt water mix when you have heavy water to give you softer water. And these are some of the tubes that take the water from the circulation motor to the spray arms. And this is the run capacitor. We just changed that out with an aftermarket one. Test that out. And that's about it for the main components. You can see when you're putting this bottom panel back on that these feet, there's a little cutaway in the plastic where they can go. That helps you to line it up. Get that inside there, inside that cutaway, and just kind of wiggle it in until you can get it in as flat as it'll go. Give it a little bit of a shove and get those screws back in. We got a special fork. Pop that up. Unlock that one. And there's a hole here. We're going to go in. Let's see if we can turn it. Oh yeah, it turns pretty easy. So I'm able to spin it all the way around. So I know it's not stuck because it's moving pretty good. But for you to be able to really turn it, you need to have pretty straight. You need to bend it pretty straight, and it's better to get rid of those middle ones if you can. Just an old fork.